The first scream doesn't come from a human throat. It rises as metal on metal, a rust-bitten shriek that ripples across the wheat like a hawk's shadow. Samuel Carter pauses mid-swing, shovel blade sunk in a vein of clay, and cocks his head toward the barn. Wind slips through the cedar boards, whispering secrets. The storm-bruised afternoon smells of wet hay, diesel, and the stubborn sweetness of rain after dust. Another sound, hollow, thudding, travels up the old timbers. Something shifted under there. He wipes his brow with the cuff of a sun-faded flannel and tells himself it's just the slab settling. The land has been giving way all summer. Gullies carving deeper teeth, the well coughing air. Banks call, neighbors don't. Samuel works and tries not to count the days. But the barn has never lied to him. Not once. When it complains, there's a reason. Rusty, the mutt that follows him like a second shadow, lifts his head and stares. Low growl, fur bristling. Samuel waits. Thunder is rumbling beyond the dark line of cottonwoods, the kind of Midwestern thunder that drags its knuckles across the horizon. And then, there, a soft, unmistakable clink, as if glass is tapping glass under the earth. All right, Samuel says to no one. To the barn, maybe. To the ghosts of men who put its frame together when a horse was worth more than a man's pride. His boot heels grind gravel on the path. The sliding door rolls back, protesting, stuttering on its tired track. The light beyond is a dim soup of gray. Dust floats like a private snowfall. He steps inside and feels the temperature dip. The air holds the mild sour of old oil, mice nests, rope dust, split cedar, mildew. The floorboards are a history of hoof marks and tractor ruts. He crosses to the middle bay where the soft ground has begun to sag around a circle of rotten planks. Rusty keeps to his flank. Blacktail a metronome. Samuel kneels and presses his palm to the wood. The grain is cold and damp, pulsing faintly with the earth's breath. He raps his knuckles once. A hollow answer rises up. He looks toward the rafters, where a nest droops from a beam like a forgotten lantern, and imagines the barn holding its own breath. He wedges the shovel's edge between two planks and levers up. The wood peels with a sigh, threads of white mold stretching and snapping. Beneath, the dirt has been tamped so hard it rings like clay pottery. He scrapes, sweats, breath fogging in the cooling air, until the shovel's lip kisses something not dirt, not stone, metal. He scrapes again, clearing a curved line, then another. His heart picks up. It's paint, a dull, mossy green, slick beneath the dirt. He takes a breath he didn't know he was holding. The outline is almost comical, rounded like a beetle's back. He digs faster, throwing wet earth to either side, uncovering a fender, a headlight glass half full of soil like a blind eye. The more he clears, the more the shape insists on itself. A car, buried under his barn. The storm shifts the light from pewter to lead. Rain begins. A brief whisper on tin, then a steady drum. Samuel surrenders to the work. By the time he exposes the hood, his hands are shaking. He rolls the come-along off the wall, threads a chain around a crossbeam, and hooks the rusted bumper. The chain creaks, complains, then holds. He ratchets slow. The car rises an inch from its grave and vomits a river of mud from its underbelly. The stink is old earth and something sweet rotten. Come on, he says. To the chain, to the rain, to the years. The winch clacks. The car climbs, dripping. It settles onto the planks with a thud that stirs the pigeons in the rafters. Samuel steps back, chest heaving, and stares at the thing that shouldn't be here. A 1960s silhouette. Long hood, chrome grin, lines that once meant promise and speed. A Chevrolet, he thinks. No. Ford? He can't be sure under this much mud. He circles to the trunk. The keyhole is a black mouth. He thinks of calling someone. He doesn't. This is between him and the barn. Between him and the land that has been patient with him even when he hasn't deserved it. He wedges a pry bar under the trunk lip and leans. The bar bends. He grits his teeth and leans harder. Metal gives, a shudder, a groan. Then the seal breaks with a wet gasp, like a held-back sob. The trunk lid lifts. Samuel looks inside. The breath goes out of him. His knees hit the floor. Rusty whines and presses his head to Samuel's shoulder, as if to keep him from falling through the dark. There's a boy's jacket folded with fussy care. A tin lunch pail dented on one corner. 2 pairs of little shoes, their laces knotted together like they were meant never to be parted. And in a shallow wooden crate wrapped in oiled cloth, A stack of letters bound with twine. Rebecca's handwriting. Samuel knows it in an instant. He knows it like the taste of iron when you split your lip and the smell of summer rain on asphalt. He hasn't seen that looping, steady hand in 20 years. The barn fades. The rain becomes a sound from far down a hallway. He pulls one letter free. The paper has yellowed along its creases. He turns it over and traces the return address with his thumb. Rebecca Harper, 221 Maple, Carter's Bluff. He swallows. The twine creaks as he loosens it and the smell of oiled cloth and lavender rises. Impossible, but there. His vision blurs. Sam, the letter begins. If you ever find this, if you're reading, it means I was braver than I felt. The words tilt a little where the pen pressed harder, where a heart trembled behind a wrist. He can't read more. Not yet. You came here for a story. Maybe you're watching this in a quiet room, or on a bus where strangers lean their heads against smudged windows, or in a kitchen where the light is warm, but the money is thin. Maybe you know the shape of a desperate month. Maybe you've held something that smelled like the past and didn't know whether to cradle it or throw it in the fire. I'm asking you, stay with me. Life on this farm has been a treadmill set too fast for a tired body. Samuel wakes before light, feeds Rusty, counts feed sacks like rosary beads, listens to the well wheeze, drives the fence line, patches wire, lies to himself about numbers. The bank has a man, Warren Steele, who smiles with teeth too white and shakes your hand as if he's collecting fingerprints. Warren never misses a chance to remind Samuel that paper has power, and signatures are like traps laid in tall grass. Debt doesn't shout, it hums, and it hums everywhere. Samuel's house is one story of peeling paint, windows that stick, a stove that clicks twice before catching. Dinner is beans, sometimes eggs, always coffee. He eats standing up because sitting makes him think. He keeps a picture of Rebecca in the kitchen, turned face down. Don't ask him why. He'll tell you the frame is cracked. He'll tell you it fell during a storm. He won't tell you that hope is heavier than wood. If this is your first time with stories like mine, welcome. If it's not, you know the language. Weather as a character you can't bargain with, machinery that breaks on payday, good dogs, old barns, and letters that arrive too late. Before we go further, do me a favor. If you're feeling the pull of this place, hit subscribe so you don't lose your way back. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, what your sky looks like tonight, what your hands smell like when they come in from your work. I read those notes at the kitchen table when the house is quiet, and the walls stop breathing for a minute. The wind has turned. The storm leans into the barn. Samuel slips the letters back into their crate, like laying a child to sleep. He forces his eyes to the other things in the trunk. A photograph album wrapped in brown paper, edges soft with touch. A small steel box with a key taped to the lid. A leather satchel stamped with initials, A.H. He doesn't recognize those. He tries the key in the steel box, it turns. Inside, a title folded 3 ways. Grease fingerprints ghosting the margins. Deed of transfer, it reads. Carter's Bluff Farm, 86 acres. Dated a year he was driving to another town to forget his own name. The transferee isn't him. It's a name he knows too well. Warren Steele. But the signature line is blank. So is the notary stamp. Samuel's throat tightens. The barn suddenly feels crowded, like he's not alone. He looks for old footprints in the dust and finds his own. He looks for a camera and finds crane flies. Outside, thunder cracks open and the rain comes hard, a curtain of silver needles. The world narrows to the soft drum of water and the twitch of Rusty's ear against his sleeve. Samuel lifts the album's paper wrap and sees the first photograph. 2 men in front of this barn when it was new. One is David Cooper, Samuel's grandfather, his jaw square as the barn's sill, his hands huge on a shovel. The other man wears a suit too dark for this county. He's young, but his smile is old. On the back, someone has written, "Don't trust the man in the hat. If you're still with me, breathe." The story's about to push down, and beneath this floor, something else is going to push back. He spends the night in the barn. He drags an old wool blanket from the tack room and lays it over 2 hay bales. The car, freed from the earth's grip, sits like a beached thing. He can't bring himself to shut the trunk. The letters lie where he can see them. Rusty curls at his boots, a warm punctuation mark. Rain loosens toward midnight and stops, and silence stacks high. He dreams of gravel. In the dream, it's falling from the rafters like gray snow pinging off the hood. He wakes to a softer sound, paper skimming wood. A photograph has slipped free of the album and ghosted to the floor. He picks it up. The picture shows a parade down Main Street, bunting and smudged faces, children balanced on curbs. In the right corner, a woman, Rebecca Harper, laughs out of the frame at someone he can't see. Her hand is at her throat where a locket glints. The sight cuts him, clean as wire. He makes coffee on a camp stove at dawn. The barn warms to gold, dust turning to confetti in the slants of light. He reads. The letters are journal entries threaded to a future version of him she hoped existed. They tell him what he already knows, that love can be a dam that bursts when you're not watching, that a mistake can be a country you move to without a passport. But in between those truths, Rebecca writes about the barn, about men coming at night to bury something while David Cooper looked on with his jaw set and his eyes somewhere past the horizon. She writes about a name whispered in the feed room, Arthur Webb, and always, the warning. Warren isn't just a banker. He's a collector. Under the letters is a thin ledger, its pages crinkled. The columns are meticulous. Dates, sums, initials. AW appears beside figures that would choke a church. There is a note in the margin beside one entry, written in a tighter hand. 4 boys, disappeared at Riverbend. Ask Raymond Holt. The name tugs at a memory. Raymond Holt, who now sells feed out on Route 9 and talks about the old days like they're a field you can plant again. There is another sound, not the wind, measured, confident. Footsteps on the boards outside. Rusty is up, hackles a brief brush fire. Samuel stands and steps to the barn door, fingers smudged with oil and dirt, letters safe under his arm. Warren Steele has a way of filling a doorway so he doesn't have to knock. He wears a suit that doesn't understand mud and a hat that has never met rain. His smile is the kind you give a friend right before you sell him his own watch. Morning, Sam, he says, the syllables sticky. Weather finally broke for you, thought I'd swing by, see how my favorite client is doing. Samuel doesn't say, I didn't call you. He says, you're out early. Early bird meets worm, that old thing. Warren chuckles, stepping inside like he owns the floorboards. His eyes adjust to the dim and go straight to the car. The smile clicks off, then back on like a bad fluorescent tube. Well now, what have you unearthed? Samuel says nothing. Silence has always been his second language. Warren circles the Ford, because now clean enough the badge is obvious. A 1967 Fairlane, the kind of car a man buys when he wants his neighbors to see him coming. Warren taps a fender with 2 fingers. The sound is solid. He glances at the open trunk and pretends not to notice the letters. Considerable value in something like this. Even in this state, considerable. He leans against the hood and lowers his voice. You're behind, Sam. 3 months. The bank's patience is thin, but I believe in neighbors helping neighbors. The smile again. Teeth again. Let me help you sell this, and we can tidy up your situation. Samuel studies Warren's shoes, their mirror polish reflecting barn light like water. He thinks about the steel box and the blank transfer. He thinks about the album's caption. Don't trust the man in the hat. Not for sale, Samuel says. Warren's eyebrows inch up, playing surprise. Well, that's a shame. Because there are complications attached to old property. Paperwork gets dusty. Titles misfile. Sometimes items like this are, how do they say, encumbered. By who? Samuel asks. Warren smiles as if he's been paid each time he does. That's what I'm here to help with. He tips his chin toward the trunk. May I? No. For a moment, the 2 men exist in a pocket of air that feels compressed. Rusty steps forward until his shoulder touches Samuel's knee. Warren pats his breast pocket, feeling for something, then thinks better. There's a hearing in 2 weeks, he says lightly, as if discussing the weather. Foreclosure, unless, of course, you and I discover a mutual solution before then. Cars can be liquid. Memories, too. He leaves, the barn swallowing him in reverse, footsteps receding, dust settling. When the sound is gone, Samuel realizes he's been holding his breath again. He lets it go and it rushes out of him like water. He calls Raymond Holt. Raymond answers on the 4th ring with a voice like a hinge. Samuel explains. There is a pause long enough for a whole season to turn. I told David, Raymond says finally, that burying a lie is like planting bindweed. You think you've got it and it smiles up at you from the other side of the fence. Who's Arthur Webb? Samuel asks. Man with soft hands who did hard things, Raymond says. Drove into town in that Ford. The boys were found downriver with gravel in their pockets. No flood that week, no reason but somebody's reason. David wanted to take it to the sheriff. Arthur convinced him there was a right way and a fast way, and Warren found the door between them. Raymond coughs. You still got that stew pot from your mother? Samuel blinks. Yes. Good. Put the ledger in the stew pot and put the pot in the oven. If anyone stops by unexpected, you'll be making supper. And Sam, don't sign a thing. He hangs up and the barn seems to nod. Samuel takes the ledger to the house as instructed, tucks it under the Dutch oven, and slides the whole thing into the old stovetop. He returns to the barn to face the car. He scrapes mud, cleans chrome, follows clues with a rag and a pocket knife. There's something rattling inside the trunk's right fender well. He removes a panel and finds a film canister, metal warm from his hand, the lid stiff. Inside, a strip of negatives, faces in tiny reddish squares. He can make out Warren Steele, decades younger, standing between Arthur Webb and David Cooper, the barn behind them, a night sky so black it eats the edges of the men. In one frame, there are 4 boys, expressions wiped off like chalk. By noon, the sun has sliced the clouds into scraps. Samuel drives into town with the negatives, the album, and the letters sealed in a plastic tote. He stops outside Edward Harper's hardware because Edward has a darkroom in the back. In the doorway, Rebecca's cousin looks from Samuel's face to the tote and understands something has tipped. Don't tell me, Edward says softly. Tell the room. Let the chemicals listen. They're better at keeping secrets. He develops the negatives with mill-measured care. He lays the wet prints like fish on a tray and regards them with the professional sorrow of a man who has fixed too many broken hinges. This isn't your trouble, he says. It was always ours. They call Sheriff Thomas Brown, whose tie knot is too tight for a day like this. The sheriff studies the images. His mouth is a flat line. We've had rumors, he says. Rumors don't survive the winter. Photographs do. Warren came to the barn, Samuel says. The sheriff nods. He'll come back. He never comes only once. Samuel doesn't sleep much for a week. He reads the letters by lamplight, listening to the little noises a farmhouse makes when it thinks you're not listening. He hears Rebecca in every scratch of the pen. Hold your ground, Sam. Some men are mud, step wrong, and you're stuck to them for miles. She writes about leaving because she thought she'd poison him with her sorrow. She writes about coming back and seeing the past sitting on the porch in his shirt, waiting. She writes about courage like a seed that refuses to rot. He starts a list on a torn feed invoice. Names that repeat in the ledger. AW for Arthur Webb, WS for Warren Steele, DC for David Cooper. Sums beside them, big ones, connected to auctions that cleaned out widows' barns, to accidents near the river, to deeds that moved across desks like clouds. He draws lines between dates and photographs until patterns appear. Warren didn't just collect debts. He collected silence. The second visit comes on a Wednesday. Blue as a bruise. Warren arrives with Stanley Gilbert, a deputy whose badge is too shiny and whose eyes don't know you can fold compassion into authority. Warren is all courtesy at first, hat tipped, voice warmed. He asks for a look at the antique automobile for valuation purposes only. He mentions a court date the way someone mentions the time, casually, as if it's a law of physics. Samuel steps outside. The yard smells like cut hay and motor oil. You're not coming in, he says. Don't be like that, Warren soothes. You misunderstand me and it hurts my heart. He actually says that. Samuel wonders what color a man's heart is when it can say a thing like that. Deputy Gilbert clears his throat. Mr. Steele is acting in the interest of First County Bank and of this community, Warren finishes, eyes staying on Samuel the way a hawk stays on a pasture. Besides, that car might be stolen property. Hard to prove otherwise without an inspection. Samuel feels heat rising at the back of his neck. You can come in, he says when Sheriff Thomas Brown is standing beside you. For a second, Warren's face misplaces its smile. It is naked and small. Then the smile finds its way home. As you wish, he says, tipping the hat again, and they walk away like a weather system biding its time. Samuel calls the sheriff, who is at Paul Rogers' gas station changing a tire because sometimes being sheriff means you do that. By sundown, Sheriff Brown is standing in the barn, pen lit between his teeth, eyes moving like a carpenter's, measuring, while Samuel shows him the ledger, the photographs, the blank transfer. The sheriff whistles through his teeth. You've got yourself a nest, he says, and half the snakes have law degrees. What do I do? Samuel asks, hating the way the words feel, like he's swallowed them back too often. Rusty presses against his leg, a reminder that some answers are warm and solid. You file an injunction to halt foreclosure until an investigation concludes. The sheriff says, you let me subpoena bank records. You don't meet Warren alone. You breathe. That night, the sky bruises toward rain again. Samuel stands in the barn with a flashlight and talks to the car like an old friend. He tells it what he's going to do. He tells it he's sorry he lifted it out of the quiet. He is startled by how much he means it. The discovery comes the next morning, a small thing that climbs on the shoulders of larger things. In the album's back cover is a slit he hadn't noticed, a pocket stitched to hide. Inside, a note in David Cooper's square hand and a key wrapped in waxed paper. The note says, if they come for the farm, let the land speak. The key is stamped with the number of a safety deposit box at Whitaker Savings, a bank that closed a generation ago. But sometimes closures are like deaths that leave bones. He shows the sheriff. Sheriff Brown calls James Whitaker's granddaughter, who now keeps the records in a storage unit behind a florist where the air smells like soap and lilies. The granddaughter meets them there, keys jangling on a ring like tiny bells. She leads them through a maze of boxes to a tin cabinet that looks like it has waited its whole life to be important again. The key fits a box that sticks before surrendering. Inside, wrapped in newspaper brittle as autumn, 4 ID bracelets from boys who should have grown stubborn and gray, a handkerchief monogrammed AW, and a ledger that's a twin to Samuel's. But this one has signatures. Arthur Webb and Warren Steele again and again, their names abrade through the town's losses. There's also a cassette tape in a cracked case with Barn Midnight scrawled in grease pencil. Edward still has a tape player, because of course he does. They listen in the hardware's back room. Night fills the speakers. Crickets sawing, someone's nervous cough, a shovel biting earth. A voice that, as David says, this isn't right. Another voice, the one that matches the small smile, says, right is a luxury, Mr. Cooper. We are making do. The tape ends with a dull thud and someone saying, light now, and the whir of a flashlight turning. They have enough to push. They also have enough to make men like Warren panic. Panic in men like that is wild and accurate. The antagonism sharpens. Samuel finds a dead crow wired to his fence post. He finds his mailbox hammered flat. He sees a tan sedan hunkered at the edge of his field at dusk, exhaust ghosting. He gives the negatives to Sheriff Brown and the letters to Edward for safekeeping. He keeps the car in the trunk where they are, as if the barn itself is a witness under oath. On Friday, Warren returns alone. No suit, work boots, a denim jacket meant to say, see, I'm just like you. He steps into the yard, palms up. Sam, he calls, voice softer. Let's talk like men who've both done the wrong thing for a right reason. Samuel doesn't answer. He is in the doorway with Rusty at his heel. He sees Warren's eyes flicker around the property, measuring angles, distances, who might be watching. You're going to lose this place, Warren says, and there is no warmth left in it. Not because I want it, but because you've made choices. I'm offering you a path that hurts less. Sign the transfer and I'll lease the land back to you for a season. Get your feet under you. When tempers cool, you forged grief into a business model, Samuel says quietly. You took folks' worst days and sold them back their dignity at interest. Warren's shoulders drop half an inch. The public face peels away. You think your granddaddy was a saint? He asks. And the hate in the question is an old hate. He put that car in the ground. He also left a trail that ends at your desk, Samuel says. The sheriff has it. So do I. The pause is short but absolute. Warren lets out a breath and nods once as if an internal tally has resolved. Then we're done talking. He walks away. He doesn't look back. In his wake, the air feels thinner. The night they come is starless, as if the sky has been sanded down. Samuel is awake because the quiet feels wrong. He sits up in bed and the house holds itself still, listening with him. Rusty lifts his head and bares his teeth at a sound only dogs and old farms can hear. Headlights wash across the curtains and then vanish. Killed quick. Doors open. Boots on gravel. 2, maybe 3 men. Samuel moves like a man who has rehearsed this in his head for years. He slips jeans over cold legs, pulls on boots without socks, takes the flashlight with the good batteries and crosses to the kitchen. He opens the oven and lifts the Dutch oven lid. The ledger is warm as a living thing. He tucks it under his shirt. Glass breaks at the back of the house, the little window by the mudroom. He hears a whispered curse, the shape of Stanley Gilbert's consonants. He moves past the kitchen table where Rebecca's picture lies face down and touches the frame once. A benediction. He whistles for Rusty. a sound they both understand as "stay close." Then he opens the back door and steps into the dark. The barn is a blacker shape against black. A chapel, a rib cage. He keeps low, slips through the side door he greased yesterday, and breathes the barn's breath. Hay, oil, old rain. He clicks the flashlight once, lighting the Fairlane's chrome, one heartbeat, then off. He positions himself behind the car, hands on the chain winch. He can pull the car forward if he needs a barricade. Footsteps on the yard, whispered words. He hears Warren's voice and someone else shorter and meaner, the kind of voice a man grows when he is used to being told where to stand. "Back," Warren says. He'll run for the barn. He's a sentimental man. They enter through the main doors. The beam of a flashlight chews through the dark in a lazy figure 8. It finds dust and corners and then flicks across the Ford's flanks, gilding it. "Well now," the meaner voice says. "Look at that." Samuel feels anger climb his ribs like a ladder. They're not here to talk. Warren steps forward, scanning. "Sam," he calls out softly, and the softness is worse than the threat. "Let's not escalate this. You've gotten yourself into a narrative where I'm the villain and you're the plowman with dirt under your nails and a dog with a name like, what is it? Rusty." His laugh is a paper cut. "It's appealing, but it's not real. What's real is contracts." Samuel says, "What's real is 4 boys who never came home." Silence presses all around them. Rusty trembles against his calf. The other man, he sees him now, Clarence Russell, all shoulders and impatience, steps toward the trunk. "Just grab the papers." Samuel yanks the chain. The car lurches forward 2 feet with a guttural complaint. Clarence yelps and stumbles back, boots scraping. Dust lifts, swirls, hangs. Warren swears under his breath. The beam jumps and skitters up the rafters where pigeons explode into beating wings. The barn becomes noise and movement. Rusty launches, teeth finding denim and then skin. Clarence howls. "Gilbert!" Warren snaps. "Flank him." Samuel darts along the car's other side, low, the way his father taught him to move through corn when the wind is wrong. He reaches the far stall and pulls the cord on the big door. It rockets up and rain slants in, cold and coin-smelling. Wind tears down the aisle. He grabs the come-along's handle and slams the Fairlane backward, then forward. It's a foolish, desperate motion, but in the tight space it creates chaos. Clarence swings a length of pipe that hits the fender with a scream. Warren shouts something about evidence. A light arcs in from the yard. Headlights now, purposeful. Tires huff, doors slam, voices. Sheriff Thomas Brown is a man who reads weather. He has brought it with him. In the yard, he orders someone to cut the barn lights. When they blaze on, when fluorescent hum floods the rafters, the scene rearranges into something official. "Hands where I can see them," the sheriff says in a voice that has stopped bar fights and talked down men on roofs. "Stanley, don't make me regret the badge." Deputy Gilbert freezes, eyes wide, hands up. Clarence is bleeding at the thigh, breath sawing. Warren's expression is what a mask would look like if it knew it was a mask. "This is a misunderstanding," Warren begins, spread-palmed. The sheriff looks at the pipe in Clarence's hand, the cut in his jeans where Rusty still growls, the chain marks on the floor. He looks at Samuel's shirt where the ledger creates a square shadow. He looks at the Ford, at the open trunk, at the letters inside. He has the kind of mind that doesn't take long to add. He reads rights in the barn's echo. He cuffs Clarence and tells Stanley to step outside and breathe. He tells Warren he is being detained pending questions about evidence in an ongoing investigation. Warren's smile has nowhere left to go. It falls from his face and lies on the floor like a shedskin. "Sam," the sheriff says, softer, and his eyes travel to the trunk's crate. "Is that what I think it is?" Samuel nods. He reaches in like a man reaches into a spring he used to drink from and lifts the letters. He hands them to the law. For a moment, the world narrows to paper that carries a woman's voice across years like a bridge you can walk. Warren breathes through his nose, a horse ready to rear. "You think this will touch me?" he asks, voice flat. "I am the weather in this county." The sheriff tilts his head. "Weather changes," he says. "Ask any farmer." They take Warren and Clarence into the wet night. Stanley drives the sheriff's car because his hands are shaking and he needs to do something that feels like work. The barn lights hum on, then off, then on again, like they are remembering how to be useful. Samuel sits on the trunk's lip, the metal cold through denim, and lets the adrenaline leave like a tide. Rusty lays his head on Samuel's boot and sighs so deep it seems to pull the last of the dark out of the corners. In the sudden quiet, A small sound ticks under the Ford's dash, a relay giving up the ghost. Samuel laughs, a choked bark, surprised by the human space of humor in a night like this. He looks over at the open door and sees shapes he didn't notice before. The outline of David Cooper's tools on a pegboard. The faint chalk mark where a younger Samuel measured a younger dog's height, just to have something to do with a quiet afternoon. The past and the present sit down together and don't fight for once. Morning arrives on bare feet. It tiptoes through the cottonwoods and runs a hand across the field until the wheat stands a little taller. The barn is all soft gold again. The car looks less like a secret and more like a story with an ending. Sheriff Brown comes back with Richard Collins, the county attorney, and Elizabeth Lizzie Moore, who runs legal aid out of a second-floor office that smells like coffee and conviction. Papers are signed, stamped, filed. An injunction halts the foreclosure. A judge in a distant courthouse looks at photographs and ledgers and decides that weather, in fact, does change. The bank board meets and meets again, under the heavy portrait of men who believed portraits could hold back time. Warren resigns to spend time with family, which is an interesting way to describe sitting under sharp lights answering questions. Arthur Webb doesn't resign from anything. He disappears behind a door with no windows. Neighbors appear, as they always do when the worst has already happened and it's finally safe to be kind. Grace Thompson brings a ham glazed like stained glass. George Mitchell fixes the barn door track with the gentle competence of a man who has made peace with nails. Rebecca Harper doesn't come. That's not the kind of story this is. But her cousin brings a box from her attic with a locket inside. Rebecca's, wrapped in a handkerchief that smells like peppermint and cedar. Samuel opens the locket and finds a photograph of himself he doesn't remember posing for. His mouth serious, his eyes a little foolish with hope. He sits at the kitchen table and lets the picture pour him into a shape he can stand up in again. The Fairlane goes up on blocks. Edward lends Samuel a manual thick as a family Bible. Samuel replaces wires, scrapes rust, swears, laughs, gets grease on his shirt and leaves it there. He doesn't restore the car to shine. He gives it back its voice. On a Sunday afternoon when the wind is kind, he turns the key and the engine coughs, stumbles, then catches, old heart knocking, then finding its rhythm. He doesn't drive it far, just down the lane and back with Rusty's head out the passenger window, ears slapping, eyes closed in a dog's prayer. When the foreclosure notice dies, other debts follow it into the ground. Not because money appears, but because the community remembers what paper is for when you use it right. Not to bind, but to bind together. Samuel signs a new loan with terms that look like a hand held out, not a trap. Henry Thompson at the co-op gives him a month's feed on a nod. Martha Ann Williams writes his name on a tab for coffee and pie and says, "Don't argue." Samuel stands on the porch at dusk and the place feels taller. The house breathes easier. The fence wire sings a higher note. He eats at the table, sitting down. He turns Rebecca's photograph face up. He reads her last letter again, the one where she writes, "Courage isn't a roar, Sam. It's the quiet answer you give the fear when it asks if you're still there." He answers out loud, "I'm here." If you've come this far, you carry part of this farm with you now. The wet iron smell of a storm, the scrape of a shovel, a dog's warm patience, a car's trunk opening on a future you thought had dried up. If you need a lesson carved on wood, nail this one to your wall. Faith isn't the belief that nothing bad will happen. It's the decision to stand when it does, and to stand again after. Courage is heavy. Loyalty is heavier. Love is the only thing that makes either worth lifting. There's another thing I ask. If the story meant something, if it steadied your hands or reminded you of a name you needed to remember, watch another story right after this one. Don't let the world drown this out. Click over to the next video and keep me company while the coffee cools. Subscribe so we can keep walking these fence rows together, looking for the places the land still wants to speak. In the comments, tell me where you are tonight, and if the rain is coming your way. I read them. I answer when I can. Sometimes I just sit with them and it's enough. The barn settles. The engine ticks as it cools. Rusty snores, paws twitching, running in place across some private field. Samuel Carter turns out the light, and the farm, his farm, keeps breathing.